Right, good evening everybody. Thank you for coming on this lovely night. So, first of all, have we got any apologies?
I'm subbing for Councillor Ken Woodhead,
Yeah.
who's still recovering.
Any others? Philip?
Yes, I'm subbing for Councillor Anna Crosby. She's apparently in Krakow and there's been some problem with her plane getting back here. So she was expected to be here, but
Okay.
transport issues.
Thank you. Any other apologies?
Through you, Chair, we've had apologies from Councillor Donna McRae.
And Steve Carr, I believe.
And Steve Carr.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So next up on the agenda, declaration of interest. Has anybody got any declarations of interest? No? Cool. Next then we have the minutes of the meeting from the 25th of September. I've already noted one little thing I know to point it out to Jeremy, which he'll sort out for me. Excuse me. I'd like to propose that they're true. I'll second that.
I'll second that.
Anybody got any comments on the minutes from the previous meeting? All those in favour? Against? Abstentions? Thank you. So we are on to our markets review.
Sorry, Chair, we've just got a couple of agenda items there.
Oh, sorry, yes, I forgot about those. I'm jumping ahead. I do apologise, and I've been told off. So yeah, we've got considerations of call-ins. I don't believe we've got any call-ins. No. And then on to the spotlight review of markets.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Right, that's my fault. So, take it away.
Thank you, Chair. Is that on?
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. So, my name's Liz Cooper. I'm contract delivery manager for economic development, but then also manage Claire, who's sat to my left, who's our markets officer from the borough. So my understanding is there were 10 recommendations set by the Overview and Scrutiny panel. So I've sent out a report that you hopefully should have read, but I'll go through each of the recommendations and give you an update based on each recommendation, if that's okay. So the first recommendation was to produce an annual market service business plan to look at the performance of markets, events planning and revenue forecasts to ensure the markets are resourced and supported. So the markets are monitored on an ongoing basis with an annual action plan in place to provide priorities. So a summary of the current action plan was included as part of that report. So that's reviewed on an ongoing basis. We review monthly footfall and finances for the markets, and then review actions and opportunities as we go through each month as well. So markets are generally resourced and supported, but the growth of the market's quite separate, and a lot of that's based quite heavily on staffing and financial resources and funding and timings as well. So you'll see in the report that some things are kind of taking a little bit longer than we'd hoped to kind of get things moving just because of timings of things, but we can look at that in a bit more detail. So the second recommendation was about exploring options to having evening markets to increase footfall with the nighttime economy and linking that with the events in the borough. So at the last update that we provided, we said that we wouldn't be currently taking that one further just because we conducted some research and at the last update we updated that the additional night markets wouldn't be considered this time, but purely because night markets are really, they're part of kind of larger events management rather than a markets function, and they're there to support footfall. When we consulted with businesses, they believed that markets, nighttime economy markets with as part of an event would be food led and drink led, and that would then cause displacement and take trade away from their businesses. So right now that one isn't something that we would take forward as part of the markets function, but can be explored at a later date as and when required. The third recommendation was about researching the opportunity to hold quarterly stakeholder group meetings for feedback for improvements in sharing ideas and to ensure communication between the stall holders and the markets officer. So as part of that, and as part of some wider town centre work that we were doing, we did establish town centre retail forums, and the market traders were invited to attend those, for which we had no uptake. So we've kind of reviewed what we're doing, and we're kind of liaising with them on a weekly basis. Just kind of officer trader relations, improving those. But then what we also do is we do regular surveys. So for ad hoc markets, we'll always conduct surveys with traders and with the public. And then we're in the process of doing the annual 2025 survey at the moment. So the traders go and have a January break, so it will give them an opportunity to use January as a bit of a reflection period, so we can collate the findings of that when they're back in February. Recommendation 4 was about improving advertisements of markets across the borough, including the council website, social media and market trader websites to promote days and times of the markets. So we, as part of some UK SPF funding that we commissioned new photography of the market so that would support an enhanced social media campaign. So that's currently been delivered, and then we're in the process of updating all of the online information in relation to markets as well, in partnership with the comms team. Recommendation 5 was providing opportunities for free stalls to charities at the weekly markets. So at the moment, Wednesdays are fully booked in Beeston Market, so there's not an opportunity there. So really the opportunity is only around Mondays. So Claire has approached people about Mondays, but they're quite hard to sell, aren't they? But we will make sure that as part of the updates for the website that is promoted, that free opportunity. So that's an ongoing one. Number 6 was about exploring opportunities to promote markets in the north of the borough. So this could include theme markets such as vegan or locally produced food and craft stalls. So in terms of that, there's 2 things here. So it's around establishing a market in Eastwood, which is something that we've picked up again this year throughout 2025. Been working away trying to get that off the ground, but we did get £40,000 worth of capital funding through UK SPF that we suggested we could use that to kind of level out and create a space near the library for a market. But as that area at the moment is earmarked for further development, we were asked to put that on hold because there was no point in investing in an area that's potentially going to be redeveloped. So we went back to the drawing board and looked at the Hollies again, which is the area where the market was previously, which is now privately owned, and spoke with the owners, who had no desire to allow us to have a market there. But what we did agree with them is there is an area in front of the car park, a pedestrianised area that we're using our funding to declutter. So we're just removing old street furniture and creating a nicer area there, that there is potential, subject to agreement and subject to more work, assessing health and safety, of having a stall or 2 there if we can get agreement from the landowners once that work's done. That work's currently underway and will be completed by March 2026. But further down the line, the idea is to get a market back in Eastwood, but it would be after any redevelopment in the most suitable site. The second part of that is around having kind of artisan vegan markets and so on, which Claire's explored with some private market operators. But often they're not interested in council land, so a lot of them are interested actually in Giltbrook. So we've tried to facilitate putting them in touch with the right people, but that's all we can do at the moment. Recommendation 7 was about exploring the opportunities presented through the redevelopment of Victoria Street car park as part of the Stapleford Towns Deal project for mixed-use opportunities. ensuring links and opportunities for market developments in the town centre, and exploring other opportunities for creative spaces across the borough. So again, there's two things here. So the redevelopment of the Walter Parker Square in Stapleford, at the time when we issued the report to you, there was a tender out for a contractor to take on that work, to do the redevelopment work. So we'd put in that come April that will be under construction, and we can start putting a plan in place for getting that place, that area activated again. We actually didn't get any submissions as part of our tender, so we've got to go out to tender again and just make sure that we get that promoted as best we can and get some contractors to apply for that opportunity. But what it does mean is that even if we're looking at going to tender in January, which means that hopefully we can contract with a new contractor by March, and the works would start in summer next year. So what's happened in the past couple of days is we're now working towards just doing a one-off spring market in Walter Parker Square before that redevelopment takes place, so we can just start putting out feelers for traders to use that space. And then Claire's she's had a couple of ad hoc inquiries that you can now take to use that space. But once the redevelopment's taken place in the summer, we'll aim towards having a regular quarterly market as well as ad hoc events there. And then the second part of this is around the redevelopment and the new build of the Pencil Works Enterprise Hub in Stapleford. So as part of that redevelopment, there'll be a maker's space, which is an open event space within that. The Pencil Works is aimed at creative and digital businesses. We're currently working on the operational management plan for the Pencil Works, and part of that is looking at how we activate that space for cultural activities, links to the community for cultural and creative events, and holding things like artisan markets and meet the maker type events within that facility to activate Stapleford Town Centre. So although that's something that will happen, it won't necessarily sit under the heading of markets, but it will be that type of activity, and it will be managed in-house by whichever operational model we go with for the Pencil Works. So moving on to recommendation number 8, that was about increasing the market layout in Beeston Square by so we were removing the Waterhead statue, which that took place, I think it was about March, wasn't it, in 2025, and actually, so that's complete. And actually what's that's enabled Claire to do is to increase the number of traders that she has in that space. One of the regular traders has more space, doesn't he? Yeah, he pays for more space in that area. And then for events such as a recent Christmas light switch on, it just made for a better event.
Much better, yeah.
Yeah. Recommendation number 9 was about considering increasing the higher charges of Beeston Square, and about bringing Beeston's Farmers Market in-house, which are two things that have happened. So the Beeston Farmers Market was brought in-house last year, and that's growing and going from strength to strength. And then we introduced new charges for the square hire and for stalls in January 2024, and then new charging structure in 2025, and then we're currently looking at the charging structure for 2026. And then alongside that, we've got a gazebo hire policy, procedure and policy as well, which just enables gazebos to be hired out and creates a sinking fund for replacement of those gazebos, but also it allows free use of them by community groups, not-for-profits, and so on. And then finally, number 10 was about considering the possibility of using empty buildings in town centres for pop-up shops and for creative spaces, or for an indoor markets concept. So as of, well, the same update as last time really, in that this one's part of a much bigger piece of work for economic development. It's not necessarily for markets, because markets aren't necessarily the answer for those types of vacant units. We often find that given the kind of overheads in terms of business rates and utilities and so on, that we can't model it in a way that would be viable for market traders to trade in there, and that kind of pop-up shops are usually only one answer to vacant premises. You only have to take each vacant premises on its own merit and look for individual action plans. A good example of that is the work we're doing at the moment around the high street rental auctions. That is only focused on Stapleford and Eastwood, but that's looking at vacant properties, kind of basket case type properties. So there's a plan in place for those, but often vacant premises, some of them are just part of natural churn. But like I say, it's not really under the heading of markets, more of a wider economic development action that we work on an ongoing basis, actually. So, sorry that took a while, but any questions?
Okay, thank you very much. Jill, your hand's been up.
Could I ask you please how many extra markets you're going to run, where they are, and where markets are actually up and running now? So where markets are actually up and running now, where you intend to put extra ones, and exactly where they are. Thank you.
So at the moment in Beeston, we've got the weekly markets on a Monday and Wednesday, and then we have the monthly craft and food markets. They're established. In Stapleford, we plan to have markets on the Walter Parker Square, subject to that redevelopment. We'll start with quarterly markets, see if we can establish that and get traders interested, with the view to increasing that if we can. And then alongside that, the kind of artisan meet the makers type offer in the pencil works. In Kimberley, it will be on Toll Bar Square. So Kimberley Town Council want to take over ownership of running that particular market. They started to look at it in 2025, but struggled to get the traders that they wanted for Kimberley. So they've just kind of put it on the back burner while they're just getting Kimberley Hub up and running, and then with the view to coming back to it in a few months' time. It'll be led by them, but Claire, in her capacity of markets officer, will help them with some of the kind of arrangements and so on. And then Eastwood, the view is to have Eastwood on the square outside the library, but that'll be more of a long-term thing. So should the Walter Parker redevelopment, Walker Street development go ahead. But yeah, like we said, if we can in the interim, if we can find a space just to have one or two traders to kind of whet the appetite, then we'll do that in the interim. But that'll be on the Hollies.
Yeah, thank you. Stephen.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It was interesting actually about the Monday markets actually, and the fact that you're struggling with them, and the fact that it's not traditionally not a day for market. And when you think about it, Saturdays and Sundays probably is a market day for lots of people. So have we actually looked at alternative days for the market instead of Monday?
That's a Claire.
We haven't at the moment, but it's something that can be considered in the new year.
I just think, if traditionally Mondays isn't a market day, which in hindsight, which is a lovely thing, does sort of make sense, perhaps it's something we should further investigate.
Sorry, am I okay to speak? Just to let you know that as part of this survey, what we could do then, the survey we're doing at the moment, we could feed that into the survey and ask the traders if they'd be willing to trade on any other days.
The one issue we might have is that some of the traders that do trade on a Monday do trade other places on different days, so they might not be willing to come back to Beeston. But we can put that in. We can feed that into the survey.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Jill?
Just going back to Kimberley.
Pass it again, Jill. Thank you.
Just going back to Kimberley, are you going to close that car park there?
We have done in the past for the previous markets, yes. For the previous Tuesday market that was held on the car park, yes, we did.
Thank you. Anybody else got any questions? Philip?
Yes, I think This scrutiny was originally set up at my request because I was very unhappy with the fact that we were going down the market route. You, as a controlling group, decided that it was going to be the best thing since sliced bread, and therefore you wanted to plough ahead with it. But I wanted to have a look at value for money, and I've seen little evidence of research into that in this report. I also expected to have a look at footfall and the effect on footfall and the potential effect on businesses within the area where the market was being held. Now, we've got a figure as far as footfall is concerned at the bottom of page 23, Beeston Sound Centre, and I wish we could stick to the British spelling of centre and not the American, please. And I'm sure that should be compared with, but we won't quibble over that. We've got it tracking at plus just under 2% compared with 2024, but down nearly 4.5% compared with 2023. So the impact on the market has not been particularly dramatic. But what it would be useful to know, and I appreciate this would be difficult to do other than to get a very generalised picture from traders, is what effect has it had on their takings? Because that was another important consideration. Because there is, in any community, only a limited amount of money that can be spent, and if it's spent in a market, it's then not going to be spent in any of the shops. And we know that the high street is suffering quite dramatically in some places. I see nothing or very little in terms of the budget for all of this work versus income. I note on page 24, we've got some figures there, annual financial performance. I'm not entirely clear what those figures are referring to, whether that's the money taken by the council during each of those periods, which I think is, if you exclude leasing of the square, which presumably is something separate anyway, I make in round figures about £11,500. So if that's the income to the council, what budget heading are we setting that against in terms of cost to the council? And that was the sort of detailed investigation that I was hoping that this scrutiny committee would do, not to just sit and justify its continued existence.
Philip, if you don't mind, if you won't hold you a second. This is just a report. This is. But as you know, this report was done. All this is a report back to us. The scrutiny committee. I don't know if you was on there, but this is like about 4 years ago. So this is just we have a 6-monthly, 12-monthly report of what's happening with it.
Yeah,
so a lot of your points
and these are points that should be picked up each time. We look at it says on page 23 we have 15 to 17 spaces available. I'm assuming that's at Beeston. Yet on a Monday 5 are taken up, 8 are taken up. Once a month 11 are taken up. Now it seems to me that across the whole of the borough there is very little appetite for markets, and I think it's time this council started to accept that. The one that was going quite well was the one in Beeston, and for whatever reason you decided that couldn't operate by a private operator, you had to bring it in-house, and it's going from strength to strength. I'd like to know how many extra stalls we've now got in that farmers market that justifies the comment that it's going from strength to strength. So I find this update, if you like, and that's how you term it, Chairman, disappointing, because it's not focusing on the issues that I think should be focused on as a scrutiny committee, and we shall just drift on. spending a lot of money for something that clearly, in my view, is not wanted by the majority of the borough.
Would you like to come back on that?
Do you want me to respond to a couple of those points, mate? So, in terms of the thank you. In terms of the annual financial performance, the square leases, that's a couple of the traders are actually, rather than paying for just for their pitch, they've actually got leases, so they've got permanent pitches. So that is part of the income. So that's included in the overall takings for the market. In terms of footfall, we're currently trying to get the day level data, but at the moment, so as you're probably aware, UK footfall's not tracking great. It is up on last year, and it's up a lot more on 2023. The town centre, Beeston Town Centre, is not performing particularly well, but the square is. So that's actually doing okay, but we're trying to, at the moment, find out if we can get the day level data to see if we can attribute any of it to the markets. In terms of the number of pitches that are available, the number of traders, and why it looks like it doesn't correlate to the number of pitches, is because a number of the traders take more than one pitch. So though we've only got 8 traders, we've got more pitches, but it's still full. So it's taking those pitches. But that's just to respond to some of the things that you raised.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for the report. I think my comment, probably back to Philip to an extent, is markets collapse if people don't use them. So the fact that people have leased out and market traders are coming week in, week out, means they're making sufficient money, or they'll go elsewhere. For one, I like a market rather than a shop. I hate shops, horrible places. Horrible places. I refused to get out at Bicester Village, going there when my wife went. I dropped off and had to go on and get on with it. I'll sit in the car. I'd rather do that. But I know I did mention about the footfall, and so that would be really good if we could get some sort of indication if the footfall is increased on market days and the impact that has on the market, but also on the stalls around the shops already around there. That'd be really good for the next report. Anybody else got any questions on that? Okay. So yes, Steve.
I just think there's a danger drawing a correlation between footfall and market days, because there could be lots of other reasons as well.
Yeah. It's trying to find out if there's any correlation there. Yeah, we don't know and what other things there, but it'd be nice to have some information of footfall. If it's gone up by an extra 300 people on every Monday there's a market, or every Wednesday there's a market, there may be some correlation there. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, that was a note to report, so... Sorry, Jeremy.
If I could just ask if you'd like an update on that report coming back to the committee, and if that's the case, would you like that in 6 or 12 months?
6 months, I think. Yeah, I think we would, because we would like to keep that on going just for now.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so next up is the final report of the Cemeteries Memorial Task and Finish Group. Committee is asked to consider the final report of the Task and Finish Group and resolve to recommend to Cabinet accordingly. I'd like to propose it.
I'll second it.
So I'll give you a brief of what's in the report, and then we'll open up. Actually, then we've got some words from other people. So, excuse me. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to everybody that's been involved in the report, from the officers to the members, to the people out there working, to the general public, because a lot of time and effort has been put into the report getting into this stage. So I think it's important to, not everybody agrees on everything, but everybody's put that effort into there. There's 17 recommendations in altogether. I'm not going to go through all 17 recommendations. I'll let you read them. I'll go for the headline ones. Headline ones from us as a Task and Finish group was, we think that grave memorials should be allowed going forward, with a stipulation of size being 1 metre from the headstone and to the width of the headstone, and being encased with proper curbstone. That was the thing. We've asked that graves further down the line, when they're dug and reused, that they will revert back to the 1 metre rule. Other things that are in there are asking to find a fund to help people who may not be able to afford headstones, I'm trying to think other things are in there that are headliners, to be honest and truthful. It was, one of the other big ones was when we went around visiting the graves in and around the borough. There was quite a few with plants growing in them and trees growing in them, which is, would be recognised as being quite dangerous going forward. So we've asked that they would be removed, and we've also asked between the cemeteries team and the members of the public's representation to come up with a list of what would be accepted on those memorials, because some places going around the borough and other areas, they will have glass, they've got food and drink, they've got things that are unacceptable, so we'd like a list made up that everybody could go. And we've also asked that the paperwork and the agreements between people and the cemeteries is be rewritten to take all of these recommendations in, and people are given a bit of a time period to start with before they sign it, and then they come back after 6 months before the headstone is put in to read through and countersign to say that they understand it. So going forward, we don't have this misunderstanding of what is and isn't allowed. I'll pass it on to Jeremy on that.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of clerical issues, really. We've also circulated a supplement with extra comments on the recommendations from the Assistant Director of Environment, Emma, and the Head of Health and Safety, Tuesday, and they're here to talk on those papers as well. Obviously, the job of this committee is to make recommendations to Cabinet, which will happen tomorrow if this group makes its recommendations. Should that be the case, and Cabinet makes a decision on it, it will be a key decision as it affects 2 or more wards. It wasn't initially listed as a key decision, however, through the relevant legislation, we've posted a notice to say that that is now going to be considered a key decision. Thank you, Chair.
Emma, would you like to go through your report?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So just in terms of the statement we've prepared, so the Overview and Scrutiny Committee have brought forward recommendations intended to respond sensitively to personal memorials at the graveside. Officers acknowledge that this is extremely sensitive and is an issue that's attracted significant local and political interest. Whilst officers respect the committee's aims and objectives, the recommendations as they currently stand do not fully align with officers' professional advice, as they introduce an increased and enhanced risk for visitors, employees and the council. Further consideration is needed to ensure that implementation addresses key risk areas, including accessibility, so that's ensuring pathways and grave spaces remain accessible, including for people with mobility aids, prams and wheelchairs. Public and employee safety, so preventing trip hazards, obstruction and instability of items that could harm visitors or employees. Legal and regulatory compliance, adherence to statutory health and safety duties. Operational delivery, so that's inspection and maintenance implications and the impact that this would have on resourcing. And reputational impact, making sure that the recommendations are clear, fair and consistent to maintain public trust and to avoid perceived inequality. Officers will implement both overview and scrutinies and Cabinet's agreed direction. Given the sensitivity and complexity of the issues involved, it's suggested that Cabinet considers establishing a cross-party working group of members and officers to examine the detailed implications to ensure that the recommendations are implemented and that they are practical, compassionate and compliant with the Council's legal obligations. If necessary and where appropriate to do so, this will be in consultation with other stakeholders. This will be for overview and scrutiny to review and ultimately Cabinet to approve. This acknowledges the recommendations' divergence from officers' advice while committing officers to mitigate the heightened risks and deliver an outcome that is sensitive, consistent and is safe as practically possible for both employees and visitors. I'm happy to take any questions on that.
Thank you very much. This Tuesday's the same or different?
It will be slightly different.
Tuesday, would you, 1 second, I've got one more, do you need to come in on that at all, is yours?
I can read the management statement now that I prepared
Okay, yeah.
earlier on, or snippets from it, because it's
Yeah,
quite
that's fine.
lengthy, because it was circulated previously. Let me just grab that, bear with me.
Shall we move on Tuesday?
If you just give me 1 second, I just need to bring it up on my screen.
Okay.
So basically, in a nutshell, I submitted a management statement back in May 2025 where I talked about the significant health and safety risks and the cost implications to the council to try and mitigate those as most reasonably practicable. And the concerns that are serious and significant are the impact on our employees from spending additional time using machinery that creates hand, arm and whole body vibration, to increase that beyond the working exposure limit as specified by the Health and Safety Executive under PUA, which is the Provision and Use of Work Equipment Regulations, would mean that that risk is increased and not decreased. And with the additional measures that have been asked for, with the increased metre to a foot rule, etc., that would increase additional costs because we would need to replace equipment with more suitable, up-to-date, modern equipment. We'd have to do increased screening, we'd have to through occupational health, and therefore for me that's not a reasonable position for the council to be in, because we can't control that risk.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody have any questions for that? Jill?
Well, it's not exactly a question, it's a comment.
Okay, that's fine.
Not all manage their own cemetery, not all parish council. You've heard this one before. I've been a not all parish councillor for over 40 years, so I'm a bit of an expert on the cemeteries. And I do know they are very, very difficult. You are dealing with people who've just lost somebody, and it is difficult. Having said that, we have got to be very careful. We have got to take care. We have got to listen to what officers are saying. Because, excuse me, accidents can happen. And Christmas is the time when people put a lot of things on graves. It's a difficult time when you've lost somebody, and I know that because I've just lost my sister. At Nuttall, what we do is actually we provide sort of baubles which people can go and help themselves to and write messages to the loved ones, and we have them put up on a tree at Christmas in the cemetery, what's it called?
Memorial Garden.
In the cemetery. Yeah, so as I say, we have got to be very careful.
I agree with you 100%. And some issues, some of the recommendations, they kind of like cover little bits like that, particularly for people to be allowed to put extra on for birthdays, Christmas, anniversaries, but with the time scale as well. And there's also one of the recommendations that came in was to look at some sort of a digital memorial to move forward, because obviously, you know, the next generation, everything's digital, everything's AI. So something whereas, you know, they can have a QR code on, they can scan it and have a live memorial as such. So a lot of that consideration has been put in there. On some of the points, particularly from Tuesday with the health and safety, one of the recommendations is that Cabinet agree funding to mitigate these problems. Because yes, we none of this has been taken lightheartedly, and we understand extra work will be needed, and we've asked that funding be made for that, whether it be extra people, different equipment, or whatever, to get round this. Anybody, any other questions? Colin? Yeah, sorry, Philip.
Yeah, I'm presuming it's long-term maintenance, isn't it? Is the problematics of everything.
Yes.
And safety issues. So it is going to be ongoing until we've got a satisfactory outcome on the long-term maintenance, really.
To an extent, is the cemetery teams have had to work round it already, but I want to make that easier, and I agree with you, we want a long-term solution to it. So whether it's new equipment, whether it's extra people, something to get round this so they can maintain. And I understand the hand with machinery, I work with it all the time. If I've got somebody at work where they're having heavy machinery and vibrating machinery, you find something else, or you limit the time they're on it. You're on it for an hour and they swap round. There's ways around these things. Philip.
Yes, I understand the difficulties with cemeteries. They are the cause of considerable problems. But this council's got itself into a complete mess over this issue. We have rules and regulations, and they are in place for a reason. And we've heard the reasons from the two officers at the back there. They are saying to us, and this is my understanding, that the recommendations, if they're taken in their entirety, are basically illegal. They will not meet the requirements of the various acts to protect our workforce, to protect visitors to the cemetery. And I am not prepared in any way, shape or form to vote for recommendations that are basically illegal. And I shall be asking for, I'm asking for a recorded vote on this because I'm not prepared to support it. And if you want to know the reasons why, you turn to page 37. And you can see there, page 37, 6, paragraph 6, first of all, accountability and risk of liability. Maintenance or funeral operations, the council may be held liable for failing to act on known and documented health and safety risks. We've got the known health and safety risks just reported to us. In such circumstances, individual councillors and officers who ignored or opposed the professional instruction could be exposed to scrutiny, including potential investigation under the Health and Safety at Work Act. So you are going to be personally liable, or we are. And then under 7, personal accountability and potential liability, while councillors acting within the scope of their duties are generally protected from personal liability, this protection is not absolute. And personal liability may arise in circumstances where an elected member disregards formal health and safety instructions. We've just had those formal health and safety instructions, not instructions, but advice. And if you ignore that advice, then you can be personally liable. And I am not prepared to be personally liable because I've gone against professional advice. And we're told that the council has weakened its own position by granting a 12-month extension. And what you have just said, Chairman, and indeed what Emma Giorgio has just said, is that let's kick it into the long grass and set up further working groups and weaken our own position even further. Again, I am not prepared to do that. You have got information as to what the rules and regulations are, and they need to be enforced. And I've read somewhere, and I think it's on page 46, recommendation 11, and it's already been spoken about. Consider making available any additional funding necessary to implement changes to cemetery management and grounds maintenance procedures which are required to work around any memorials that will remain under the new rules. Well, you're going to have a two-tier system anyway. You're saying that new memorials, new grave plots have got to adhere to the new rules or adhere to the current rules, but those that haven't before a certain date can carry on not adhering to them. And if the reason for enforcing the rules is to make things safe for our staff and visitors, those failings, those issues of lack of safety and poorer working conditions will still be in place around the old memorials. And your suggestion, or the suggestion in the recommendation, that additional funding is necessary, you're suggesting that we make additional funding, an unspecified amount of additional funding, because a small minority, and it is a small minority of people, no matter how vocal they are, don't want the rules implementing. Now, Councillor Mrs. Owen has referred to the fact that in Nuttall we manage our own cemetery, and we have a similar set of rules, and we enforce them, and at times it has not been easy. But we went up there this afternoon, go and visit a lot of old friends up there now. I know quite a few people in Nuttall Cemetery, and I have to say it looks immaculate. And we have enforced those rules. Now, what you're saying to my residents, our residents in Nuttall, is you stick to the rules in the cemetery in Nuttall, but because a few people don't want to stick to the rules elsewhere in the borough, we're going to spend a lot of your money on providing new equipment, additional equipment, which may not necessarily anyway completely solve the problems. What you need to do, what this council needs to do, is to grasp the nettle and say it is now going to enforce the current regulations and get on with it. And yes, you may well get some adverse publicity in the short term. I know only too well. About that. But you have to face it out. But for goodness sake, my advice to you, and I'm sure you'll ignore it, my advice is that you implement the rules, that you do not accept these recommendations. I personally, and we've got no whip on our side, because scrutiny shouldn't be politically based, I'm going to vote against these recommendations because I'm not prepared to put myself in the firing line should an accident happen. And, Chairman, I want my vote against recording, please. Others will take their own view.
Okay, thank you for that, Philip. On some of your points, two-tier. If you go around and look at literally every cemetery around Broxtowe, around Nottingham, it's already two-tier, because people have got curbing on some graves, not on other graves. It's been allowed, it's not been allowed. So you've already got that. The mitigation to make it safer, if that's done correctly, which I every belief it will be, then we're not going to be alarmed with anything because we've made it safe. For this committee, this is a recommendation. The final decision is made by Cabinet, not by us. It's a recommendation only. And from my conversations with a lot of people from different walks of life, I think people's minds and attitudes towards funerals, towards death is changing. We don't have funerals anymore. We have celebrations of life. And I think this is what people are doing. And I must admit, when I first started this, and I told several people, my initial response was, stick to the rules, I'm not bothered. I don't personally, I'm not a fan. But spending my time over the last 6-7 months visiting graveyards, speaking to people, not just in Broxtowe, in other parts of the area as well, and at work with people, and even having to go to a funeral of a good friend of mine over this time period, my attitude has changed. I still don't believe in them, but I believe in the freedom of choice for the people, and people want that, and people I've spoke to go, yeah, I'm all right with it. It's a freedom of choice, and every single grave, every single one of them is individual. And I don't think we can look at them en masse and go, this is what we got. I don't want military graveyards, just row after row of exactly the same headstone. I think people should have that choice. I will be voting for this. Well, I will be. But also do remember, this is the committee that did this was with all parties, and we all came to an agreement. And Philip's right, scrutiny isn't a political thing, and this is why we have people. So no, we've agreed now, we've taken the time, we've visited the cemeteries, we've spoke to the people, we've had our own battles ourselves of what we believe and what we don't believe. And the recommendations that we've put forward are the ones that we think are the best ones. But that final decision will be made by Cabinet. Has anybody else got anything they'd like to add to this? Okay, I'll let you turn this time.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just remind the meeting of, I think Councillor Owen's taken a convenient view when he spotted an opportunity to make that statement there. Of course, he did support his colleague, Councillor Don Pringle, who was adamant that the intervention that Broxtowe Council made in laying headstones down on the back of Eli's Law was the wrong approach and a heavy-handed one, and indeed too expensive. And if health and safety really is your overriding concern, Councillor Owen, then you should have, in that case, supported what we were trying to do in supporting the department in that case there as well. Separately to that, the omission that isn't in this report at the minute is any mitigation that will be carried out to ensure that the correct balance is struck between allowing some sensitivity and indeed not allowing a huge departure for our staff.
On the subject, do we do recording voting?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Yes, Councillor Owen mentioned a recorded vote. You also mentioned your individual vote being recorded. There are a couple of options there, Councillor Owen. If you wanted everybody to have a recorded vote, we'd just need a seconder and a proposer. If you just wanted your vote recorded, that's a possibility too.
I'm proposing that we have a recorded vote, Chairman, and I do know that you've allowed Councillor Marshall to speak, who's not a member of this committee. I've not been allowed when I've been sitting in to speak. So and trust that's a precedent that's been set for the future, and I look forward to that.
Through you, Chair, we just need a seconder for that recorded vote as well.
Yeah, I'll second it.
Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, before you go to any form of vote, would you like to consider Emma's proposal of a working group to be added to the recommendations? Would you like discussion on that?
Yes, does anybody have any? Anna?
I don't want to be seen to be kicking this into the long grass, but I do think we have to take officers' advice very seriously. And I think Cabinet should consider whether there are more risk areas that Emma's highlighted, and the health and safety officer as well, that need to be considered before a final decision is made. So I'd be willing to add that to the recommendation. Obviously, it's ultimately up to Cabinet to decide, but we're also scrutinising the decisions that Cabinet made, so would need to be paying attention to what Cabinet are putting forward. So I don't know how we go about that logistically or anything else.
Through you, Chair. So we'd need a proposer for that working group to be added to the recommendations and a seconder, and then a vote on that particular issue before we vote on the final recommendations.
So do we have a proposer for Emma Giorgio's?
I'm happy to propose.
Do we have a seconder? Okay, I'll take that. So we've all those in favour of the proposal from head of, well, Emma, we'll call us, I don't know what the full title is, from Emma. All those in favour? Against? And abstentions? Okay.
Thank you, Chair. So at your gift, whenever you're ready to make the vote on the recommendations, that will now be added.
Yeah. Okay. So the committee is asked to consider the final report of Task and Finish Group be resolved and recommended to the Cabinet. All those in favour?
Sorry, Chair.
Oh, you want it recorded, don't you?
Yeah. I'll just call out names and I'll go around the room. If you could just call for, against, or abstain. Councillor Philip Owen.
Against.
Councillor Jill Owen.
Against.
Councillor Stockwell.
Abstain.
Councillor Fascio. Councillor Winfield. Councillor Land. Councillor Jeremiah. Councillor Harlow. Councillor Webb. Councillor Tideswell. And Councillor Danheimer.
4.
That's carried, Chair.
I'll visit you in prison, don't worry.
So that's carried. I'll go to cabinet. That's the next one where we are now. Okay, so the next on our agenda is Cabinet Work Programme. Cabinet is asked to resolve that the work programme included key decisions be approved. I'll propose it.
I'll second it.
Anybody got any questions on the Cabinet Work Programme? All those in favour? Against? Abstentions? And our final one.
We may
Oh,
actually
sorry.
also list out the consideration of topics for the next review, which there's no paper for. It's just on the front sheet of the agenda.
Yep.
There's no corresponding paper.
All right. Okay. Where's that one then?
There isn't a paper because there's no. It's just
Oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So number 8, which I missed. Consideration of topics for up and coming scrutiny review. The committee to consider any approve a topic format for the next scrutiny review as appropriate. Well, we haven't got anything for that, but
Through you, Chair. On page 75 are the topics that have been agreed under heading 1 that should be scrutinised at some stage. So you may choose to lift something from that table of child poverty budget. Well, obviously budget consultation will happen in January. Building control and the ASB procedure regarding housing. Or you may choose something else.
Yep.
Thank you, Chair.
Anybody got anything on that? Philip.
Chairman, I think it's time that Overview and Scrutiny had a report back on IT. Yet again, we've experienced IT as a councillor. I don't find it fit for purpose to be able to do my job as effectively as I would like. And I'm getting sick and tired of it. Spend a lot of time in the IT department, pleasant enough people, but the system, it's not, in my view as a councillor, fit for purpose.
Yes, I know you were in the other week, weren't you? We had a report back from IT not long ago, did we? Well, again, would you like to propose that?
Yeah, I'm happy to propose that, Chairman. I think there ought to be an update on it at least.
Yeah. So can we have an update on it again then, please? Yeah. If people are still, if anybody else having issues with their IT systems, it does seem to be certain groups of people. Okay. We'll ask them to come back again and report back to us. Anybody else on that? So, oh, sorry, Adam.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering, can we have some sort of feedback from businesses in particular for the Christmas light switch-ons this year? I've had comments from both businesses and residents of Stapleford and Kimberley detailing their significant displeasure in the way it has been handled, in Kimberley particularly because of the location, with closing of the side roads and then how that has impacted businesses next door to it with overcrowding, which obviously raises serious concerns over health and safety. And I'm also aware that damage has been done to these business premises during the light switch on. So I would like to see some sort of review of that process this year, please.
Really?
If you wanted to, through the Chair.
Yes. Anybody okay with that? Yes. Yeah. Good. Yeah. We'll get something sorted out for that, Adam. I don't know quite whose department it is, but yeah, it'd be interesting actually to find out, what benefits have been from it. Yeah, and in the different areas.
Yes.
No. Anybody else? Okay. So last one in tick. So the Cabinet Work Programme. So, got it.
Yep. Yes, you can do.
Right. So the Scrutiny Work Programme. I'll propose it.
I'll second it.
All those in favour? Against? Abstentions? I think we're done. Thank you very much, everybody. Have an enjoyable evening. Just short of an hour. Well done.